Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to America's podcast. I'm Nzinga, and this is Scott, and we're really excited about today's episode because this is our second episode, and we've really worked hard on this, so enjoy. So, if you don't know, just a little backstory, Scott and I are dating, and so one of the things I want to ask is, how do you feel about OnlyFans? I think I'd be interested to know since we're in a relationship.
I think it's kind of a sad replication of the courtship ritual, but with digital distance in between people, and it's usually based on some kind of theme, so the whole thing seems very contrived and kind of lurid in a sad way. I don't like it. But we'll get a chance to dive into it a little bit more today. I think this is something we've been going back and forth about.
Mm-hmm. And so Scott and I come from the more Christian perspective, so whether you think pornography is immoral or not, that's not necessarily what we're going to talk about, I don't think.
Just from a civilizational standpoint, with the health and the psychology of a male and a female, there's a lot of potential pitfalls here that I want to point out, and I think it's something that everybody should examine, regardless of their ideological reasons for favoring it or not.
Right, and I agree. I think one of my concerns is that men in general, I think people, but just talking about men right now, they're not really finding purpose. And so when they don't find purpose, as in in an existential way, they don't find purpose in smaller things. And I guess relationships isn't really a small thing, but in the little details in life, they can't find purpose there. And so things like a meaningful relationship with purpose behind it, which is to get married, have a family, et cetera, they can't find that because they don't know what their actual purpose is. And so then I think they fall for the cheap version of a relationship, which is something like OnlyFans.
But something like kind of how the way MMORPGs kind of replace the hard work ethic. Mm-hmm. You can get these guys to sit down for 50 hours straight, grinding, literally doing the same task over and over with their fingers and glued to the screen to get some artificial reward that doesn't manifest in reality, but it means something to them in the game. But then you can't get that same person to go out and do that in real life and actually earn real cash, right? It's the exact same paradigm when it comes to OnlyFans. You get these people who will go through this song and dance of trying to please and assuage and flatter and fund these women in order to get some kind of affection back, and then what they get is artificial, it's not real. And so it just seems to me more of a sad extension of people who are trading real lives for false lives.
I agree. It's a cheap version of the real thing. Because in the back of your mind, I don't believe that people actually think it's real. I believe in the back of their mind, they're like, I know this isn't real, but at least it's fulfilling something for the moment.
There's something titillating about the interactions, right? For a lot of these men, the women that they're targeting are out of their league. So there's that, wow, I'm getting positive feedback in a sexual manner from a person who would otherwise not be interested in me and would be beyond my ken. So there's that, and then there's a number of other things too. There's sexual picadillos that are being specifically targeted, certain types of relationships, personalities that these women sort of take on. And I mean, I'm assuming that men do this too.
Right.
But mostly women. And these guys are trying to fill a void or a perversion or a preference. And again, they're not having to do any of the real steps, right? They're not having to take her to the dentist on a Friday when her car gets a flat while she's angry and on her period and stressing out at him, and he still has to maintain that relationship and get her there. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It removes all the work that goes into a real relationship and replaces it with pure transactional fluff in order to get a sexual release.
And so if people think that we're exaggerating, I actually looked up some articles on OnlyFans, and this is from 2019. This is from the New York Times. I think it's the most trusted name in news outside of CNN. Anyway, so they spoke with an OnlyFans content creator named Danny Harwood, and this is the excerpt. Quote, if a guy is a real customer, she likely knows his birthday, the name of his children and his pets, even when to call after a surgical procedure. So these women, and I'm sure men too, I'm sure men do this as well, but these content creators, we'll call them, they actually give men that I love you feeling, I'm for you, I'll call you up, We'll DM. I mean,
Yeah.
it's literally a virtual relationship.
I mean, this is basic service industry sort of tactics, though. You know, if like I remember when I was a bartender, and I was a bartender at a number of places for years, remembering who your regular clients are, the ones with the money,
Yep.
knowing who their kids were, where their kids went to school. Oh, Johnny had a knee surgery. How's Johnny doing? 6 months have gone by. He thinks, wow, this bartender remembers Johnny. I'm going to give him a bigger tip. So that's basic tactics of just relational sales type personalities. But in this case, it's a little bit more in depth because obviously they're trying to, like you kind of pointed out, like they're trying to replicate a relationship.
Yeah.
A deeper relationship, an intimate relationship, not just like a sort of cordial, you know, hey Bob, I'm glad Johnny's feeling okay. Here's your Manhattan. Like, it's more like, hey Bob, here's your Manhattan, and you want me to take my shirt off?
Because in that case, you walk into a restaurant and you expect them to treat you well because you're gonna tip them. So it's like there's that transaction, but you also are buying something that doesn't have anything to do with the individual doing anything weird.
I think this is what kind of, and this is where I think I can nail it down for why OnlyFans bothers me so much, why prostitution in general a lot of the time bothers me so much, is because when it comes to building relationships in a customer clientele environment, you can apply this to sales, retail, and any number of other things like bartending or service industry, you do form genuine relationships. Maybe you guys aren't buddy-buddy, maybe you aren't really that boisterous except when you're at work, but you do genuinely learn something about somebody in a neutral capacity. There's a distance between you, there's a bar between you, and there's a service that has to be provided.
Right.
When it comes to OnlyFans, the service is sexuality, the service is payoff. And how you get that payoff and how you go about getting it requires you to have an emotional control over the subject. A certain degree of distance has to be broken. And you have to have a certain level of intimacy that should be reserved for people who are ideally applying for marriage with one another. And what this woman does is that she applies the same logic to dozens of men who are at her highest level of clientele, people who get past her, normal little, because they do this in levels.
Right.
Once you get to a certain level, they actually have an interview process, some of these women, and they actually will sleep with you in person. I've had people who discuss this with me in detail who participated in this.
Jesus.
And so it's not simply something you can do virtually. Sometimes they will take you to that level, but you have to spend a certain amount of time and money and testing and background testing and health testing in order to screen for that. So the difference is that, when Bob and I are discussing his kids, I'm hoping for a better tip, but I'm also hoping little Bobby gets better, right?
Right.
She may think the same thing, but she's also relying on the fact that you are going to be attached to her and reliant on her for emotional feedback. She's hoping that you will replace a healthier version of her in reality. Bob is not hoping that his bartender is the only person he gets to talk to. And if he does, that's sad. Bob is just there to get a drink, and the bartender's supposed to be a sympathetic ear. She thinks of the same thing, in a sense, but she's also going to need that emotional resonance with this guy in order for her to profit. I can still get a basic tip out of Bob. I don't have to care about his kids. I don't have to go deep with this guy. I can just pour him a drink, make it a good one, and be professional, and I'll make my 20% tip most of the time just by default. She has to grift these people. She has to manipulate them. She has to get close to them to get her into a clutch, get them or him or her into their clutches. And that's where the sort of courtship replication this is where it bothers me.
Yeah, because the whole thing about pornography and looking at scantily clad women, bikinis, whatever, is that it appeals to like the lower side of human beings, like the animal primal side. But then finding something meaningful and having an actual, like a real relationship appeals to the social side. Like human beings were made to interact. We were made to have that connection and to have at least a few people that we have a deep connection with. And so it's doing both at the same time. And my problem is that some of these men are probably married. And I think it shows weakness, honestly, in the culture in general, because I know a girl who was here teaching children dance, but she was too rough on them. She's a great dancer. And then the next thing I know, she moved to LA. And then the next thing I know is, I'm guessing what happened is, oh crap, LA is really expensive. And then the next thing I know, she she made an OnlyFans account.
True story. You meet anybody over maybe a 7 in Los Angeles, and they're probably doing some form of sex work, or they're working towards it. It's because the area is way too expensive, property taxes are way too high, and the entire industry encourages it pretty aggressively. So you really can't just be beautiful and poor in that city unless you want to just work at the IHOP for the rest of your life.
Right.
Rich infested apartment. If you want to get ahead, or if you want to get any comfort at all, or any kind of release from that tension financially, you're going to have to do something you basically involve taking your clothes off.
Right. But like, okay, so you're poor and you're a woman, and maybe you're above a 5 in looks. Like, it takes some intestinal fortitude to not do stuff like that. Like, I've had plenty of opportunity, like with older men, and I have been dirt poor. I mean, eating canned chicken and trying to spice up my ramen noodles with paprika.
I'm sorry, I'm still thinking about that canned chicken. You know that sound it makes when you pull it out, where there's like the suction and the grease, and it kind of has like a.
Hey, you got to add the spices, honey, and it's fine. I have had plenty of opportunity to be like, if I could date these men, I could give them what they want, and I probably would never want for anything ever again, or at least until I lost my looks or something like that.
Do you think this is a person who needs? No, she could easily find somebody richer than me.
But I have a strong set of morals, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. And I think, on the other hand, you got the men. And it just shows weakness across the board in our culture, because the men aren't like, you know what, I know things aren't working at home, but I gave my vows, I'm sticking to this. Or I'm a single guy, and gosh, man, you know, I have physical needs. I get it. I've never had a girlfriend. I understand it. But instead of having that thing inside of them that says, okay, but why don't I have it? And let me really look at myself, and let me lose weight. Let me change the way I dress, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
And I mean, you answered your own question, right? Like, it goes back to that sort of digital MMORPG sort of cyber life versus real life. Most people are more comfortable sticking to the habits that they know. And if you've spent years, and a lot of these guys literally have, since junior high and high school, spent years just sitting indoors and padding their apartment with creature comforts and investing in computers and focusing all their energy onto their digital life, when it comes to actually courting females in real life, they almost don't care anymore, because there's no real incentive for them to care. Maybe they've got years of bullying under their belt. Maybe they've got years of girls rejecting them. Maybe they're kind of super awkward and overweight and have things like gynecomastia, or, you know, they have the women tits. Like, there's all kinds of reasons why these guys might feel like the dating pool is not for them.
Right.
But they can always find a woman like a Bella Thorne or someone else who fits their sexual peccadillos to a T. They can search them out. There's thousands of them. And then they can get that girl to do exactly what they want when they want, for a certain amount of money and a certain amount of flattery.
Right.
A certain amount of investment. And so, just like those video games, it allows them to be the hero that they couldn't be in real life. The problem with me and this whole issue is that they can be that hero. I genuinely believe that. Even the most ridiculous nerd who has done nothing physically for his entire life, I can take that person if they want it, and I can help them get to that point. And I can find other people who can if I'm not the one for them. But I believe in these people, and so it makes me really sad to see people paying for sex, to see people paying for fake relationships with fake people who really couldn't give less of a crap.
Right. Yeah, I would say to men and women who are doing things like that, paying for relationships, paying for sex, and all of that, like, don't let people market you to your loneliness, because I think that's a freaking shame. And I think OnlyFans and whoever created it, I guess it's a British company, they should be freaking ashamed of themselves. And the women who are on it, and the gay men who are on it, and anyone else who's on it who's making that kind of content. Like, don't let people market your insecurities.
You know, I mean, and this is something we can probably discuss as a larger topic someday, but it just seems to me that most of the really catchy little technologies and websites that seem to be coming out nowadays are all catered towards this kind of thing. It's like Instagram, and then it immediately turns into butt media. Everything is just butts. Right?
Even for the women, the men are going like this with no shirt. You can almost see everything. Oh my god!
You know, and then you have what is like 3 seconds for a photo before it disappears. Which one is that one?
Snapchat.
I'm sure that has Yeah, I'm sure you want your Honda to disappear after 3 seconds. I'm sure that's why they designed it that way. Everything that we're doing now is designed towards some kind of illicit, weird sexual relationship, I feel like. And it's sort of like that plausible deniability on the creator's part. It's like, no, it's just a fun gimmick.
Thought it'd be fun.
Take your shirt off, sweetheart. It'll be deleted. Don't worry about it. I feel like that's where all technology goes, and I think it's part of this sort of sedate, almost farm animal-like mentality that men are taking on, where they've become so comfortable and so well fed and so drugged up and so bored and dissatisfied with themselves that they have to find novelty in that same cage that they're occupying. And OnlyFans is a great way for them to, through a screen and a huge patina of reality, but mostly artificial, get some kind of a sexual and intimate relationship with someone who otherwise would treat them like dirt if they saw them on the street. And that makes me grossed out and disgusted.
I agree 100%. I think we have to be vigilant. We have to protect ourselves as people, especially in this culture, and we have to really see what's really going on, because we could fall for those traps so easily.
And gentlemen, take some pride in yourselves. Like, even in the privacy of your own home, when nobody but God is watching you, and it feels like, hey, it's not like he makes himself manifest either when you're touching your ding-a-ling. Just think to yourself, all right, even if I don't believe in God, even if I don't have any pride, like, just think, does this person, if I were dying on the side of the road, would they take me to the hospital, or would they just pull out their camera and laugh at me? Or would they just drive on by blissfully unaware? I think you know the answer.
If you lose your job.
Stop giving them money. They don't care about you. Give it to the people who matter, and find a woman in real life who actually pushes you to be better so that you can respect her, and then you guys can have a real relationship, like real adults.